All right, today we are going to be working on subtraction with our counters. You'll get to practice with the counters tomorrow, but I want to introduce you to it today. Some things to remember: one positive and one negative equals 0. Remember, we call this a zero pair. All right, some other things to remember. Whenever we are subtracting, we are taking things away from what we started with. So as an easy example, let's just do two positive numbers. Okay, so we are starting with 5 positives. And my problem is telling me to take away 3 positives, subtract 3 positives. So I can do that. I can go 1, 2, 3. I've taken those away. What I'm left with is a positive 2, so that's my answer. Now it gets tricky whenever we are asked to take away something that we don't have. So in this next example, 5 minus a negative 3, I'm going to start again with positive 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm supposed to take away 3 negatives. Now, some of you might say, well, why don't I just add 3 negatives to it and then take them away? Well, if you add 3 negatives, you're actually creating zeros that you would have to take away, and then your 5 that you started with isn't really there anymore. Okay, so we're not going to be able to do that. We can't just add 3 negatives. So we need to think of a different way to get negative chips on the board without changing the value of our 5 positives. All right, that's where this guy's going to come in handy. What if we add 0? Remember that a positive and a negative equals 0. So if I add a positive and a negative, I've just added 0. This is 5 plus 0, which is still 5. Add another positive and negative. That's another 0. And then one more time. So what I have here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positives plus 0 plus 0 plus 0. I have the number 5 still here. It just looks a little different. And now I can take away 3 negatives, and what I'm left with is all of these positives, which is positive 8. Now what I want you to notice, what we just did here is the rule for subtraction. We added the opposite. So instead of subtracting a negative 3, we added a positive 3, and it gave us 8. So we are going to add the opposite. Right? Let's see how that looks in some other cases. All right, how about we start with negative 2 and try to subtract 4. So I'm starting with 2 negatives, and I'm supposed to take away 4 positives. Again, I can't do that because I don't have any positives there, so I'm going to add zeros. 1 0, 2 zeros, 3 zeros, and 4 zeros. Now I can take away 4 positives, 1, 2, 3, 4, and what I'm left with are all these negatives right here, which is equal to negative 6. Now let's see if adding the opposite would have given us the same answer. If we had changed this to adding the opposite, which is a negative 4, is negative 2 plus negative 4 equal to negative 6? Yes, it is. All right, one more. What if I have a negative 3 and I want to subtract a negative 5? All right, let's start with 3 negatives. 1, 2, 3. I'm supposed to take away 5 negatives. Now I have some of those to take away, but not enough. So I'm going to add a couple more zeros. Here's 1 0. So now I have 4 negatives on my board that I could deal with, and 1 more 0. Now I have 5 negatives, so let's take those away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What I'm left with right here is a positive 2. All right, let's check to see if adding the opposite still works. So instead of negative 3 minus negative 5, it's going to be negative 3 plus a positive 5. Well, negative 3 plus a positive 5. The signs are different, so we subtract. Keep the sign of the larger. There's more positives. So I get 2. Same answer. All right, so something that you might want to write in your journal, when you see a subtraction sign, you're going to add the opposite and then follow the addition rules. All right, let's do some examples without the counters. If I have 4 minus a negative 12, I'm going to change this to 4 plus a positive 12. Add the opposite. 4 plus 12 equals 16. What about 8 minus 20? Okay, I'm starting with less than what I want to take away. So I'm going to change this to adding a negative 20. All right, my signs are different. I'm going to subtract. 20 minus 8 is 12. And I'm going to put a negative sign because there's more negatives than there are positives. One more. Negative 15 minus a positive 3. Remember, we're going to add the opposite, becomes adding a negative 3. A negative 15 plus a negative 3 gives me a negative 18. All right, these are some good examples for you to put in your spiral. And if you want to use a different color to show adding the opposite, I think that's a good idea. One more thing before we move on. I want to show you again how to add on the number line with positives and negatives. So keep in mind that we're going to start on the number line with the first number, and then the second number tells us if we're going to move to the right or the left. So let's say I have negative 1 and I want to add 4. I'm going to start at negative 1. Since 4 is positive, I'm going to move to the right 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I end up here at positive 3. All right, another example, let's say I want to start at 2 and add a negative 5. I start at the positive 2. Since negative 5 is negative, I'm going to be moving to the left 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I end up at negative 3. All right, the bars, the lines like this is how you're going to see adding and subtracting on the STAR test and on assignments and things like that. So I wanted you to see that more clearly. All right, make sure you have taken your notes and finished your vocab.